Welcome to Electric Libertyland, here on the Lions of Liberty podcast, your weekly shot of culture, comedy, and liberty with your host, Brian McWilliams.
Welcome, everybody, to the show. This is Electric Libertyland, and I am Brian McWilliams here in the Lions of Liberty Network. I wanted to welcome you all in after a momentous Super Bowl weekend. I will have thoughts about that, about the Super Bowl, about some of the advertisements that ran, and the rampant wokeism, which, even though toned down this year, was still front and center as the start of the Super Bowl game, at which I could have won tons of money, ended up just winning a small amount of money, but still, a win is a win. So I'll get to that in the second half of the show because I have a very special guest today that I'm very happy to bring on here. He has launched a new social media platform called Retalk, and I want to make sure that you don't conflict and say, oh, great, it's going to be another Getter clone or a Parler clone. It's not. It's its own interesting offering, and I'm happy to bring him on here in just a second. So before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys that you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. Of course, that's got all the bonus content. That's got my Good Morning Fuckhead rants, my special show, which I complain about things right front in the start of the day. Because, start off complaining is the way to start any day. So you can get that, you can get Conspiracy Corners, and we just started doing the South Park recaps, which I do with Dan Smots over at the System Is Down podcast. So make sure to get in there, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals. Okay, without further ado, I am happy to bring in Pete Zaborszky, a man who sounds British but is in fact Hungarian. And he is joining me. Like I said, he has launched a new social media app. It's been around for a few months, building up some base here, called Retalk. Pete, welcome to Electric Libertyland.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, it's been interesting. I've gotten to know you a little bit, and you have a fascinating backstory in that you are Hungarian by birth. You then went to the UK because of the environment in which Hungary found itself, of course, becoming socialism and communism. So tell us a little bit about your backstory. How did you, a little bit about your upbringing, leaving Hungary, why you decided to come back, and how this is all tied into your, your overarching sensibilities on civil liberties and free speech.
Sure, yeah. So I was born in Hungary, and it was still the Soviet Union when I was born here, and it only lasted 4 years. So I was still only 4 years old when the Berlin Wall came down. But obviously, my parents have a lot of stories. My grandparents constantly told me stories about what it's like to live in socialism and communism. And then my parents decided to move to the UK for job opportunities, and that's where I grew up. And I think that gave me an insight into both the English-speaking world and obviously to the Eastern European world. And that's probably part of the reason why I had the idea for Retalk and why I've created it, because I can see the parallels in the whole woke movement, in the communism, the communist stories that I've heard, and I can see what's happening in the English-speaking world. And it's scary, and it's also very, very worrying. And I really feel like I want to do something about that. And I've been a tech entrepreneur for a long time. So I feel like I can actually do something and create a new platform, which I have now, or we have, the team obviously as well.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too, in that your background as an entrepreneur in technology, you had created a privacy-centric company. I don't know if you want to talk about that, just to let our audience know a little bit more about, you're a guy who clearly has, when it comes to business focus, it's still tied in with your personal beliefs. And I think privacy is a big part of that, especially as we look around to all the data that's shared, how much is out there and how much we voluntarily give versus what is taken. So do you want to just go into that so people have a little bit of an idea of, you're a guy that can get things done?
Yeah. So it's called Pro Privacy, and it's a privacy advocacy organization. And we also kind of teach people what privacy tools to use online. And I started that 9 years ago when I think privacy was kind of the major issue of tech. And obviously Silicon Valley was pushing all the data harvesting and doing all sorts of weird things with your data. I felt like that's something that I want to help people to avoid. I don't want big companies and governments harvesting data. So how can we help people do that? And then I guess over time, I think the big issue now is much more censorship and just the absolute domination of the woke culture in Silicon Valley. And I think that's why I felt that that's the area that I want to work on, and that's where I want to start a new venture and help people who are frustrated with this problem, just like I was.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, it's interesting. Donald Trump, of course, had hit on, I think part of what his popularity was pushing back against woke culture, right? He went out there, he was saying better or worse. He'd said what on his mind. He tweeted out, of course, notably was kicked off Twitter. The president of the United States deplatformed to show you the power of these people in the tech sector. But he hit on something, which is that a lot of people are sick of being controlled. They're sick of this speech being policed, and it is policed by a very specific segment of the population, which is the progressive left. And when we look at the way in which, I guess technology has given us these forums, right? This is the public square. It is the public space, which is where dialogue is happening. What do you think, when you look at the juxtaposition of the public square under communism and the authoritarian policing of words, of the ability to congregate virtually versus what we have now, are you seeing the direct parallels? And how do you think the best way we can combat this is? Because I thought Donald Trump, when he got out of office, with all his money, would start his own platform, or at least would start, how about a server farm, Donald, that you can have conservative viewpoints hosted on so you can't get deplatformed by Amazon?
Yeah. I still think the crucial difference and why I'm quite positive is because there's still a marketplace which in communism or socialism you have less and less of, or maybe none at all. So I really believe in the market, and I'm very, very libertarian leaning, and I think it's almost we're in a transitional period where I think the market is starting to catch up to the problem, but we're still in this situation where all the big platforms they've been built in Silicon Valley. They're dominated by woke culture, which obviously doesn't fit for a lot of people. But the platforms they have done a very, very good job of these platforms and the network effects, and everyone's on them, and the user interface is amazing. So it's very hard to leave them. But what I'm hoping is that eventually the market will correct. And I really don't believe that we need government intervention. I think it's just we just need to be a little bit patient. People who are frustrated right now just need to be a little bit patient and just wait for the market to create new products. If there's a need out there, which I think there definitely is, then the market will create that. And obviously, as the founder of Retalk, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to fill that market need. So the way I see the market developing is I think social media, just like old media, is going to fragment by political views. So just like you have CNN and you have Fox, you're probably going to have social media companies for all the different political groups out there, because social media is a way to consume information, and most people want to consume information through people who are similar to them, and that's why old media split down sort of political lines. And I think it's inevitable that that's going to happen in social media as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And by the way, I'm curious, why? So, two questions: why Retalk? How did you come up with that name for the company? And then, as a secondary question, as I said in the introduction when I was telling people who to expect to be on with me momentarily, this is not just another Parler. This is not a Getter. This is not a Twitter clone. I've described it more as a Reddit for the right, and it's very your app is very community centric. It's focusing on different topics, not just hot takes. And it's also got a blogging component, which, I'll announce it right here. I'm going to start a comedy blog on the Retalk platform because I think it's interesting and I want to support it. So check that. Yeah. So check that out, guys. I was sick last week, and this week I'm going to get around to doing some comedy posts because I used to have an ongoing blog, which, for some reason, Ford invited me to come out and be an ambassador for their brand back in the day. And this was back when you could get away with saying far more and horrible things on this blog. So I'm looking forward to be able to say horrible things on Retalk. but yeah, tell me a little bit more about why you decided to make it a little bit more community centric, and also where the name came from.
Yeah, maybe the second part about community is more important. I think social media has two really big problems right now. One of them is the censorship and the moderation issue, and how that's very woke and left-leaning on current platforms. But as you said, the other big problem is that what's really rewarded now on social media is hostility, sound bites, short conversation. That's what Twitter is all about, but I think Facebook as well. And that's just not what I want to create, and that's not what I believe in. It's a small difference, I think, but the format is different on Retalk, and it makes a difference, and it encourages debate, it encourages thoughtful conversation, and I think that's my other big mission. Is it's not just about censorship, but it's about creating a platform with better discussion. I think that's really, really important. And in terms of the name, I spent a long time, and I tested a lot of ideas with friends about what name it should be, and obviously you're limited to what domain you can actually buy. So I had a lot of ideas, but then I couldn't actually turn them into a website. So it took like 1 or 2 months of thinking about all sorts of possibilities, and what reflects what I want Retalk to be. And it was really amazing when I actually found out that Retalk is available. I can buy it. It's a really good brand. So it took a while to find it, but I think it works very well.
Yeah, I do too. It's catchy. It's short enough that it's easily memorable. And to get back to the conversation about community building, and as I do think that one of the biggest problems we have today as a society, as the way we communicate with each other, is that things are taken as sound bites and predominantly out of context. I mean, the entire flap with Joe Rogan and the N-word right now is a good example of this, because somebody put together that supercut of Joe Rogan just dropping N-bombs, and you go, okay, fine. But when you look at the context of it, typically it's him having a discussion about whether or not you can say the N-word, or a lyric of a song, or somebody else said it and he is now saying it, but you take that and there's no context to it. You clip it. Now, granted, somebody could come on to Retalk and clip out one sentence of a longer conversation, but I think there's something to getting away from short, out of context, or short form, one sentence replies, and showcasing, look, we're having a conversation here. This is a deeper perspective that we're talking about. And as you noted, it's broken down kind of Reddit-like into the community. So you could talk about gardening, you talk about anything else. So it's not just going on there to see what the latest thing to get pissed off is.
Yeah, I think there's something about the Twitter format. I mean, I've got a Twitter account, but I try and log out and only look at it rarely. It does seem a little bit like cigarettes to me. Like, it's just, it's bad, but you just have to do it. It hijacks the brain in some way.
Especially after you've had a couple drinks. It's the same.
Yeah. And then you can post even angrier than normal.
All right,
yeah. And I think another important part from a practical point of view is that if you build on communities, and if you build on interest topics, you can build like a grassroots community. You don't need VIPs to follow. You don't need politicians, influencers, things like that. And that was another reason why I chose this format. Is I'd much prefer to build on community of normal everyday people, rather than sort of these just following these crazy VIPs who that's what Getter's doing, that's what Parler's doing, but I think they're very, very reliant on these VIPs.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. Well, and it's also interesting in that, typical people find that you can have a Twitter following, but building that Twitter following is something where you have to be on there, imbibing the social media cancer that is Twitter every day, and cranking those cigarettes in order to build a following. The more you post, the more people see the content, the more yada, 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 right? This is the way the algorithms work. With Retalk, I like that you can, I said, create a community, but your content is going to be far more appealing to people. Your writing, how you're communicating your ideas, rather than just jumping in and yelling, 25 times a day, or however many times you have to do it, and using random hashtags just to get eyeballs on the content.
Well, and it's also not like Twitter. You're probably, when you go on there, you're only going to see the top content from the last day, or like the last 10 minutes, depending on when you log in. Whereas with Retalk, I think it's a bit more permanent. And I think maybe I'm old-fashioned that way. I can still remember when we had forums and things like that on the internet, where you actually went on and you could read what happened in the last day. And it just gives you more context. It gives you more time. It is maybe slower, but I'm I'm quite proud of that, and I think it's important to still have that, because you can't just have like 10-minute sound bites every 10 minutes and you just go crazy. It's information overload.
Yeah, precisely right. Well, let's pivot away from Retalk, because as I mentioned, you're based in Hungary. I'm just always curious to hear, after the pandemic, with the measures that are being taken. Right now, Trudeau in Canada has suspended civil liberties because of the truckers trying to push back against the mandates. What's the situation there? Has Hungary gone down the same path of authoritarianism like everybody else? How have they been with the response from the general public to that? Are they been for it? Are they complacent? Are they now starting to push back like so many of us are? And has the government been lying to you guys like they've been lying to us here in America?
It's been I've been very, very surprised at how fairly laid back and libertarian it's been here. I think maybe it's something to do with how the West just doesn't want to take any risks anymore with anything, and maybe Eastern Europe is still more willing to take risks. When the pandemic hit, there was a strict lockdown when no one knew anything about the virus, but I think that's almost reasonable. But then as soon as we started to find out information about whether it spreads on surfaces or things like that, the lockdowns after that became a lot more lenient than in many Western countries. So I think you can compare it to sort of Florida or Texas a lot more than like California and or Canada or the other crazy places. And because of that, I think even though we did end up having something like a vaccine passport, but you don't really get restricted by your vaccine passport. And I think from also the vaccine mandates were restricted to, they weren't forced on you by the state. They were forced on you by private companies, which again, I think you can debate about how good that is, but at least it's not the government actually requiring something, but it's private companies. Yeah,
well, at least it's voluntary at that point. You can choose whether or not you want to shop at a store that's requiring you to show vaccination. As in regards to the government shutting down businesses and forcing you to be, essentially, I didn't like that the government was forcing businesses to become the police and become the enforcers for vaccinations. In America, in LA, even though all these other counties and states have dropped their mandates, we still have it. And essentially now businesses, the hostess, we have this poor 16-year-old girl, it's her first job, getting screamed at by people because they don't want to show their vaccine card. And I don't blame them for yelling, and I don't blame her for being upset about it. But it was a ridiculous proposition. And I agree. Give it to the businesses. People can decide where they want to shop. But tell me a little bit about what's the disposition of Hungary. We talk about free speech. We talk about woke culture. Has Hungary adopted a lot of that? Is it just universal where the youth the youth went woke, now it feels like they're pushing back? Tell me a little bit about that. How's the environment there as a whole?
No, there's not woke. The woke movement isn't very strong here, and I think you can take that back to our history and to what Hungarians have been through. Our history is about really about survival. We were always getting invaded. It was the Ottomans, the Turks, the Russians, the Austrians. So we were all about survival, and we so we don't have that guilt feeling that I think what I see in a lot of English-speaking world is people are drawn into feeling guilty about everything in your history, things you haven't done, but somehow it's your fault, and we just don't have that. And when woke people come along and try and make us feel guilty about our history, we just don't understand it. It almost seems funny, like it doesn't make any sense. So you just don't have that sticking point really of wokeness. But I think also because of that, and because we're still part of Europe and we're still part of the EU, the woke parts of the EU are trying very, very hard to kind of press us down a little bit and make us comply. So there's definitely a fight going on, but there's definitely some resistance and even some. We don't really understand the whole woke thing. It doesn't really make too much sense. Yeah,
I think that's pretty funny. It's an interesting thing to point out that a country that's constantly been fighting to maintain its culture, maintain its borders, maintain its coherence. So you said because it's invasions, there's always the threat of it. I bet that is something that is born in of like, look, we got to defend our point of views. We have to defend who we are, how we are. And I wonder if that's something, America, we never get invaded, It's like the British, we kicked them out. And since then, no invasions. And I say this even in regards to like foreign policy issues. And with the guilt is that so many people here, especially in the later generations, haven't had to deal with anything. The rest of the world is so far removed physically, as far as an impact societally on us, as far as dangers of violence really coming home to roost. America's built out this empire wherein all of the problems we cause don't really have a lot of impact at home. And I wonder if wokeism is also a reflection of that. People are complacent, people are safe for the most part. And, when you have that luxury, you don't have to worry so much about trying to defend who you are and these things. And you look instead to pick it apart because you've come so complacent that you do have that guilt.
Yeah, it's almost like it was almost better in the Cold War because there was someone to actually compare yourself against and fight against. And it's weird how now with China rising up, it seems to have somehow changed. And it's almost like a lot of the Western world doesn't want to stand up to China, even though they do have dramatically different values and a way of operating. So something's been lost between the Cold War and now, because I think the Cold War kind of brought Americans and the Western world together to stand up for your values, and that's really needed again, I think. But something's missing.
I think. Well, what's missing is now there's so much financial incentive for us to be involved with China, as a trade partner, but also as a cultural partner, because so many exports of TV and film and everything else, we have so many ties that nobody wants to rock that apple cart. And even though, the NBA is a perfect example of this, right? You've got LeBron James out there, who is the most, the wokest, most insufferable NBA player, always on the forefront of whatever stupid topic needs to be commented about. And yet he will say nothing about China and the treatment of the Uyghurs, alleged treatment, and nothing about jailing journalists, nothing about the way in which they've ripped apart Hong Kong, which was promised to have a sovereign government and be able to maintain its laws and cultures. And now China's just completely reneged on that. There's too much money to be made there. And that's where it's interesting. I wonder, had we had the trade relationship with the Soviet Union that we have with China, if the Cold War would have been very, very different. And it, in fact, probably would still be going because the Soviet Union wouldn't have collapsed if they had adopted more of that capitalist model, right?
Yeah. I think I heard this, someone, no, I can't remember the name, but they were sort of saying there was at some point at which the discussion in many, many places, including in government, switched from being about democracy to being about money. It was sometime in the 70s or the 80s. And that's where something shifted, where it wasn't about democracy and freedom anymore. It was about money. And as much as I'm for the free market, the big part of that is democracy and freedom. And when everything starts to be about money, that obviously you can see that's a problem with China, that it overrides a lot of the values that you're kind of supposed to have, I think.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we see that with, not only at our cultural trade partners, but just as far as who's getting arms, who's getting weapons provided to them. Right now in Yemen, there is virtually a genocide ongoing against the people there between the United States and Saudi Arabia. And yet we're still selling weapons. We're still providing them support, and it's inexcusable. But the money is so potent there that it just continues to fund it. But anyway, one more thing I want to pivot to. We'll talk about, maybe another 10 minutes if that works for you. And then, as I mentioned,
of course,
I have to go to run off to a ribbon cutting, which, is, I always hate it. As a guy working in public relations, it's always the worst because it's just, it's a lot of pressure to get people to show up. And, people are like, who cares? So anyway.
It's all for show.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to talk a little bit about just, I find it interesting, too, to talk to people that are entrepreneurs, just about starting a company, getting it going, right? Because we have a lot of people out there. And I think one of the problems with libertarianism, right, is that we don't necessarily have a lot of people that are business leaders that are creating new content, new technology, new companies to be leaders that we can point to and go, look, this is a libertarian who believes in free markets. And I'll be goddamn, he's actually doing it. He's actually creating things. So tell me just a little bit about your process. You know, how do you come up when you come up with a company idea? How do you actually get that ball rolling? You know, how did you start the first company? Was it a huge pain in the ass? And do you have any tips for people that might want to start a similar company, might want to get into the space and try to make a difference?
So I think for me, it was always, as I'm a serial entrepreneur, this is probably I've probably tried 20 or 30 different ideas in terms of starting a business. When I was young, it was all about kind of hustling and making money. And that was my motivation. And then as things progressed, I started to go after more and more meaningful goals, and probably Retalk is kind of at the pinnacle of that. Because I think it's really, really important to fix these issues. So I think if someone's thinking about starting a business, what's really important is to think about what your abilities are, what motivates you, and trying to find a balance between that. And also you also need to challenge yourself as well. I think Jordan Peterson, for example, is much better at explaining this, but you need to kind of find the balance between order and chaos. So what you're really good at and what also challenges you. And taking Retalk as like an example of that, it's a very difficult task because building a social network is super hard, and especially breaking the network effects and of big tech companies currently is much more difficult. And I'm realizing now how much more difficult it is than when I started. But I had some financial resources from my previous ventures. I knew that I could actually build a platform, and also it's a very, very important problem to solve. So I think when those come together, that's like the ideal entrepreneurial situation where you can, you think you can do it, and also it's a challenge as well. Yeah, I think that's
something where, you said if the emphasis is everybody wants to make money, right? Money is great. Our podcast, our brand, Lions of Liberty, has been around, for quite some time. And same thing, when we started, it was more about the message, and then, fortunately started to make some money along the way, but it's not the primary driver. And I think that is important because it is so hard. And if you don't believe in it really strongly, you're just going to get burned out and frustrated, because if you don't care that much and you're not getting the results, if you're not making money and you just find yourself spending an inordinate amount of time on something that looks like it's going to fail and that really you don't care about, as far as your goals, you're probably not going to see it through anywhere near as much as something that you truly have a connection with.
Yeah. But also on your previous point on libertarian entrepreneurs, I think if we maybe forget about Silicon Valley for a while, I think many entrepreneurs, at least the ones I've met or know, they do lean quite libertarian, but I think Silicon Valley's gotten so powerful that it's been almost taken over by very, very powerful people, and you can call that the deep state or just power brokers or whatever. But I think they've with their products, politicians and powerful people have recognized that they need to control Silicon Valley, and they need to control the products in Silicon Valley. And sometimes I almost feel sorry for Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg, because I think maybe deep down, or when they started, they were maybe more libertarian, but I'm sure they have a million guns pointing at their heads telling them what to do, and it can't be a very easy situation. And that's probably why they don't seem to be very libertarian anymore, because they're way over their heads in terms of the power games.
Yeah, well, I think Jack Dorsey for me seems more authentic than Zuckerberg now, or at least has stuck to a little bit more of its principles. I mean, he was tweeting out things from from the Mises Institute, for example, and embracing Bitcoin and decentralization, which is interesting. So I think I think he's also, I think he retired, didn't he? I think he stepped down.
Yeah. Yep.
So that, I think that goes to show you, Zuckerberg is still part of the machine, and is more than happy to be part of the machine of control. And as we know, Facebook happily shares all of its data with the government and reports people, etc. So I think he's happy in that position. But maybe Jack's a little bit more principled and said, you know what, I want to get out of this. I want to do something else. I don't need to be the puppet for these autocrats or technocrats that now are making the world a worse place.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I think the new CEO of Twitter is even worse now. So it's probably Twitter is going to go even more downhill. Maybe Jack Dorsey was like the last,
Yeah.
the last resistance, and now he's out. So it's just going to go full control now.
I figured they'd deport Chelsea Clinton, just like, here you go. Why don't you run Twitter? You deserve it. Well, Pete, why don't we wrap up here? Tell people again, where to find you personally, what where they can get involved and download Retalk. I know it's on both Android, it's on Apple, it's on the website. So tell everybody where they can get you, get all of your content, all the apps, and what you think they should do when they jump on the platform. What's the best community for them to get into?
Yeah, app is probably the easiest. So you can just search for Retalk on your iPhone or your Android. Hopefully, Google and Apple won't ban us for a while. But if they do, you can go to the website. That's just retalk.com. And pretty easy to sign up. You can select a few sort of famous YouTube channels you can follow. And then in terms of communities, a lot of the content is very political, but I think if you subscribe to some of the non-political communities, that's where the really interesting conversation happens. So like the history community or cooking or what's some other ones, or just the funny memes community.
Yeah. Listen, I've been gardening, yeah, funny memes, exactly. And I said, I'll add my comedy blog on there. So no, we're talking that it's interesting. It's got the blog component of it, which I thought was very unique compared to a lot of these other social platforms. So I'm looking forward to getting that going and advise other people to blog it up as well. Hey, free blog.
Yep.
All right, Pete. Well, thank you so much, man. Congratulations on Retalk. I hope I get a lot of people on there from this interview for you, and I look forward to using it immensely. Yeah, so
I hope so too. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. All right, guys. I will be back later. I'll take us out a little music, throw it to a commercial, and I'll be back with my Super Bowl breakdown as well as some of my thoughts on advertisements. And of course, I have to talk about Pete and I didn't get into it, but I got to talk about Hillary Clinton spying on the Trump campaign, vindication for Donald Trump. Anyway, all right. Thanks, Pete. I will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. We are back in black. Literally, I am in black. Look at this. Wearing my wax on, tax off t-shirt. Our old logo. Get them while they're hot, guys, because we're going to introduce a new line of beautiful t-shirts with the new logo, but get these sweet poppin' daddies while you can. Wax on, tax off over at lionsofliberty.store. And of course, if you did jump on Patreon, you get a discount. Same with our locals folks. Let me know if you're ordering. We have a code for you to get yourself a discount on all the merchandise. And why would you not want to support our names, faces, get a tattoo? Where are the tattoos? Lazy ass fans. Anyway, welcome back. Before we get into the second half of the show, I've got to tell you about our longtime sponsor, wonderful sponsor, iTrustCapital. Of course, iTrustCapital, you should know by now. You should already have an IRA set up with them, either Roth or regular IRA, to make sure your retirement funds are protected. Now, this is, of course, crypto-centric. That's the beauty. That's the future. But you don't have to just go with crypto with iTrustCapital. You can also go with hard metals, silver, gold. You can trade over 26 different cryptocurrencies on that platform, put them away, protect them. Because the idea of the IRA, of course, is to invest, to put money away that then is tax-free from the government when you wait to take it out later. But you don't have to. You can use iTrustCapital to trade with the lowest transaction fees in the industry of any of the cryptos that they have available. So get on in there, itrust.capital. And if you start an account, if you transfer in another account and put it in there, you're going to get $100 of free Bitcoin. Yes, you heard right, folks. Go to itrust.capital/lions and use promo code ROAR. Now, you are going to get your $100 of free Bitcoin. You are going to get your security. You'll also get a, by the way, fantastic industry report about the state of crypto, what's going on right now. And of course, you can trust these people. They're backed up by 2 different insurers. They also have thousands of reviews on Trustpilot because, I wouldn't lead you astray. So check them out, itrust.capital/lions. Use that promo code ROAR. Okay. Let's get back into it. So a couple of things I wanted to jump in and talk about. Obviously, the Super Bowl just happened. I was hung over as all hell yesterday, just beyond. Now, the Super Bowl, of course, is here in Los Angeles. I am not a Rams fan, nor will I ever be. I am one of those people that is loyal, maybe to a fault, right? So I have my team. It's Philadelphia. It's the Philadelphia Eagles. That's who I root for. I do not root for Rams. I do not enjoy their fan base. I don't think they're the greatest fans out there. I think that they don't deserve it. And I would argue, from the amount of people, there's almost nothing. If the Lakers play a regular season game, there's fireworks going off. The Dodgers, people are going crazy. Rams Super Bowl, I guess people were into it, but you wouldn't have been able to tell me walking back, hitting a bar late at night, carrying an unopened thing of cheesecake bites, which, funny story, but you have to join the Patreon to hear that. Also, I'm not going to go into the Trudeau suspending civil liberties conversation today. I did that on my Good Morning Fuckhead rant, so you have to join the Patreon to hear that. Patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals. But I was very drunk walking away, but I'm not hearing, the hooting and the hollering. People aren't up celebrating. Maybe it's because it's a Sunday night, but I guarantee you, if it was the Lakers, if it was the Dodgers, you would have had people out all night. So I can't say I'm ecstatic for the Rams who have won. I really wanted the Bengals to win personally, but I still have some observations about the wokeism of the NFL. Now, the NFL's ratings went up substantially compared to last season. Last season, you'll remember they famously started doing the black national anthem along with the regular national anthem. They also had the jerseys that you're allowed to put your own Black Lives Matter stuff on the back of. They also had people doing different, I don't even know what you call them, heraldry, pageantry to the woke left to try to placate, to try to buy into the whole Black Lives Matter movement. It was cringeworthy. It was aggravating. It was annoying because people go to sports because they don't want to have politics and bullshit shoved down their throats. They want to see people on a field trying their best to win a game which they have some emotional investment in. The NFL said, you know what? Never mind. This season, I don't remember seeing really much of anything, at least none of the games I watched. I don't remember seeing much at all in regards to virtue signaling to the left. So that was refreshing, and you see that with the boost in ratings. So when the Super Bowl comes around, I'm like, okay, let's see. Are they going to do anything real special, or are they going to go out of their way to really kowtow to the left? And I guess, yes, you'd say they did. From moment one, they did, because instead of just starting the game up, they trot out the little ladies of football, and it's all these ladies, it's all these girls aged from probably 8 to 14 who are playing in their football leagues. And now I'm guessing they're playing flag football. Look, if girls want to play flag football, go for it. God bless them. Again, to me, it doesn't seem like it should be a big deal. Just like, and I've said this before, just like if there's the first black coach of something, the first black astronaut, the first lady, whatever, the first, I don't care what race, I don't care what sex it is. I would expect people to have those positions of power. I would expect people eventually to work their way up into those things, even if it's not a cultural norm, even if ladies coaching football isn't a norm. I can't say it's even a great idea because I don't know if you're going to get the buy-in from the players. But if somebody's really good, they will get through on their own merits, hopefully. Now, granted, we know that's not the situation. We know that's not the way in which the world works right now. We know people are propped up in position and pushed forward for cultural and political reasons more than they are many times for their own merits. But still, I would expect, as culture moves forward, for these things to happen. So I don't celebrate them. I just don't give a shit because they seem like they should be happening anyway. So when they see the Super Bowl, they trot out these girls, they make a super big deal about these ladies playing football, probably the members of the Future Women's Concussions of America Foundation. As these girls and football goes mainstream and girls start playing football and just start getting the crap knocked out of them. I have a joke that I was talking about, when I did stand up recently at my buddy Adam's house. And he's been a longtime fan of ours. But he, and again, I'll just say Adam Choit, that's his name, right? He has his own podcast, which you should check out. And I'm blanking on the name right now. Sorry, Adam. It's people I find interesting podcast. Oh, God, I feel bad. I'm blanking on the name, but I'm recording this and there's no stop button. So I'm just going to keep going. So I was out at my buddy Adam's house and I'm doing stand up. And this one joke, and I remember, it's just so funny because that movie 355 came out, The 355, which is basically a Ocean's 11 except with all chicks, right? Which they already did Ocean's 11 with all chicks. It was called Ocean's 12, right? As I roll my eyes, oh God, more of this. And it was predictably terrible because it's cookie cutter crap. It's written, it was written by some female screenwriter who had written a couple other things that were middling. And it was a movie that you could just tell from the trailer was swapped out. We got to get all the races, right? Which they did. We have to get all the cultural things, which they did. We got to get our Chinese lady in there because you have to go for all these different markets now, right? And there's literally, by the way, rules in Hollywood. You have to cast certain people. You have to cast certain races. You have to cast certain sexes doing certain. They have to have a certain amount of screen time talking. It's all sort of crazy crap. But that movie came out, and I'm rolling my eyes, but I'm just laughing too because you've got these movies where they're trying to make it as though these women who, I'm sorry, yes, do have biological differences. They're not as strong as men. I'm sorry, but you're not, ladies, are out there. And I don't care how much ninja training you have. If you're going up against similarly trained guys, they're going to beat the shit out of you. And my joke was that as a father of a daughter who I believe will be able to do anything except probably beat the crap out of a bunch of guys, I'm just joking that, while I love all this women's lib stuff and I'm excited my daughter can see a female action hero, I am not looking to a generation of girls going out there and getting the holy crap kicked out of them, trying to fight men twice their size and thinking they have a shot. And the funny thing is, you'd say, well, Brian, it's a movie. You're not supposed to take it literally. People aren't out there actually fighting dragons. Okay. But if that's the case, isn't the left being very patronizing to these women if they know it's a fantasy and portraying it? Because then we just have to accept that women going out there and beating great martial arts and beating up people and being super spies, that's a pure fabrication, a pure fantasy. But of course, that's something you can never admit. So they're in a little bit of a funny catch-22. However, that was kind of what cracked me up about the Super Bowls. They start off with this, okay, here's women, here's these girls playing sports and yada, yada. It just was unnecessary. It just was unnecessary and dumb. I doubt many of the women out there appreciate it. I think probably a lot of women that are getting interested in getting into football, their parents probably have even greater concerns about them getting concussions or getting hurt and whatnot than other sports. And you already have a dip in football as far as people going out for it because of the health concerns for the long term. But like I said, I'm sure these girls are playing flag football. So that was my first thought. Halftime show. Eminem kneels because Eminem's a woke cunt now. I can't stand. But I just thought it was funny because it was made for me. Like in the old days, you'd watch the Super Bowl and you're like, why the hell are they trotting out the Rolling Stones for the 50th time? Not that the Rolling Stones are bad, but they're like 70. What are they doing out there? Go home. Put something out there that's more recent. Put something out there that people want to hear that's on the radio currently. And meanwhile, they trot out these old rappers, right? And it's 50, and it's Snoop, and Eminem, and Dr. Dre's out there, and I'm sitting there dancing. I'm at the Super Bowl, I'm like dancing with my daughter. I'm getting all into it because now it's my time. I make the most money. Like I'm the target demographic. People that are my age, people that are like 40, where that was our jam in college. And we have flashbacks to grinding with people on the dance floor, right? In college at your drunk fraternity parties or whatever it was. Because obviously I was drunk at fraternity parties many, many, many times. So, yep, I get it now. I get it. I understand now why there's all these old bands playing the Super Bowl, because we are the dominant generation as far as money, as far as spending, as far as, everything. So if you didn't like that old school rap, you suck on this wang. I don't give a damn. Thank you, Super Bowl, for catering to my generation finally. Now, naturally, the Super Bowl is all about advertising. And there's always the top 10 list, right? And I remember seeing a few commercials. Coinbase's I thought was awesome. Not only because I support crypto and I'm excited to see what the reaction of that was, but because it was a perfect combination of old school retro that was simplistic enough that the older generation will understand, and long enough, by the way. It was a 60-second ad with simple music and basically a QR code bouncing around on the screen. Now, if it was 15 seconds, people wouldn't have been able to figure it out enough or gotten their phones out and scanned it. But 60 seconds, you're curious. You go, what the hell is this thing bouncing around for 60 seconds, which is an unbelievable amount of time, showing you how much money Coinbase has. 60 seconds of that QR code. And it is brilliant. It's curious. It strikes people, even if you are not into crypto, even if like I said, even if you're a little bit older and you don't get it, you have your phone. Somebody explains it to you. Somebody at that party is going to pull it out and go, "What the fuck is this?" Turns out it's Coinbase. Genius ad. A couple other ones of note. Michael Myers made his appearance as Dr. Evil. An enjoyable callback. We could all enjoy the dynamic between Dr. Evil and his son Seth Green, and the whole, Rob Lowe's in there. And they're doing the old thing. She's yelling. There's the father-son dynamic. He introduces a new baby instead of the midget, because rest in peace, Vern Troyer. Now he has a baby, Dr. Evil. And they're touting GM and their EV offerings. Now, I will say I took some umbrage to this commercial because they're saying, well, Dr. Evil, you can't take over the world. You're no longer the greatest threat to the world, right? There's a bigger threat. And it's global warming. Wank, 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 wank. And of course, I was drunk enough. I believe that's exactly what I did as I'm sitting on the couch watching this in front of my daughter, the other toddlers. I'm like, oh, wank, wank, wank. So that part was aggravating. I'm not surprised by it, right? But they were saying, oh, you've been replaced. Global warming is the number one threat to humanity. And thus, Dr. Evil, you need to save the world. And our plant's going to be making, carbon capture emission vehicles. And we're going to have 30 EV vehicles by 2028. And Dr. Evil and all the gang, they get in their EV vehicles and they drive away. Now, while the climate change stuff pisses me off, it's culturally relevant. I guess if you're going to embrace this narrative, and that is what I will call it, because I still have not seen enough empirical data to show me that anything about the climate change movement that they've been telling us is true, or that it is in fact the greatest threat to humanity, which it is not. We've already seen humanity overcomes the technological advancements of humanity combined with our ability to survive means that we will surpass, overcome, find out, figure it out, unless we get hit by a meteor and a nuclear winter happens, in which case I don't think we have to worry too much about global warming. It's funny, the media narratives, we're all the time being told there's comets coming, and also that climate change is the greatest danger to humanity. Yeah, you know what? I'd say they're both pretty remote as far as things that are going to kill humanity, but the comet would be the bigger worry for me. But don't tell that to Greta Thunberg. So, while that was annoying, it still was an interesting enough commercial. I guess if you're going to smack me in the face with a leftist fish, it might as well be in a comedic environment. So then the one last one I wanted to talk about, which I'll actually play for you. I shouldn't get dinged with this because advertising typically... did I lose my window? Advertising typically is something that you can play because they want you to play it. Like, they're not going to put up the flags. They're not going to tell you have to take it down because they want as many eyes as possible on the ad. And really, what makes an ad good is me talking about it. Even the Dr. Evil ad I have an issue with. That's what makes it good. Oh, what I'll call it too. A lot of these ads, by the way, were not extra woke. A lot of them, I didn't even see a real emphasis on making them extra colorful, and the United Colors of Bennington. I didn't see an emphasis on trying to make them extra LGBTQ. Now, I may have missed some, because I was hammered and talking and, doing everything and texting and whatnot during this event. But from the top ads that I'm reviewing, a lot of them just didn't go down that road. And maybe they're finally getting it that people are sick of this shit. If you want to have a gay couple in your ad, go for it. I don't give a damn. But don't try to make it the center point or something. Don't try to make, this 17-foot tall, trans female swimmer that's breaking all the records, as a center point, because people are sick of it. They're sick of being preached to woke. But Irish Spring had a very funny commercial. Okay. But Larry David, he was in a commercial where he's basically, and it's another crypto-centric commercial for FTX, which I guess is an exchange. But it is a commercial where Larry David through time is just fucking up. Everything that's a good idea, he's taken a pass on. So let me go ahead and, Let me go ahead and play this. I got to wait for the damn video. And I'll share this on my screen. So those of you watching on Odyssey, watching on YouTube, Odyssey preferable, since YouTube keeps trying to kick us out, you can enjoy it. So here we go. I got it queued up. Let me share my old screen here for you, sweet, lovely watchers. And we will share this, and you and I will have ourselves a wonderful time. All right, here we go. So let me get Larry playing here. All right, and here we have it. And of course, why is that? I call it. All right, never mind. There we go. Now I got it, folks.
I don't think so. This is a miss.
Brother David, behold the fork. I got 10 forks right here, baby. A toilet? We're not animals. We go outside like humans.
Hancock.
No king. The people shall have the right to vote. Even the stupid ones?
Edison, can I be honest with you? It stinks.
Nobody's going to the moon, ever. Why not? It's far. It's too far. It's far.
の未来はポータブルミュージックです。
バカか。出て行け。バタリがいてもいるぞ。バタリ。
Like I was saying, it's FTX. It's a safe and easy way to get into crypto.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I'm never wrong about this stuff. Never.
There you go. Okay. So now you could probably guess what my favorite part of that commercial was, right? There are a couple of funny things. Number one, the moon stuff. It's too far. Funny because, as you know, there's always conversations about whether or not we really went to the moon, right? We'll go down conspiracy lane. Dan Smots, my buddy, of course, is famous for his thoughts on the moon landing and the documentary, which he has promised and which we don't know is ever going to come. But I'd rather he not work on the documentary and instead work on finishing up my new jingle, my new theme music. And by the way, we just issued our brand new South Park recap. I actually might share one of those just on my Electric Libertyland solo feed, which of course you all should be subscribed to, as well as this main feed. And I may share it on there just so you guys get a little taste of that if you want to join the Patreon and listen. But funniest thing about it, I just loved it. All the people will get to vote, Hancock. And he's like, even the stupid ones! Because, look, we have our issues with democracy, right? We libertarians don't view straight democracy as the answer because, even the stupid ones are out there voting. And then even the stupid ones get to get their vote out there. They don't even have to show ID in half these places now. They don't have to know anything about anything other than the government's going to give them more money or promise them more this and that. Or they're pretending that they're going to tackle racism and they're going to tackle, extremism, right? And really, all they're doing is these people are going out and thinking they're voting in their self-interest or because they're convinced they're doing the right thing when they don't know what the hell they're actually voting for. They don't know anything about the monetary issues behind it. They don't know anything about the secondhand causes, the fallback, the blowback, everything that is involved in these votes that they're doing. And even the stupid ones are voting. So that wraps up the Super Bowl. I'll add one more thing about the Oscars, and then we'll move into the story about the Clintons. I'll talk about that in about 10 minutes. But the Oscars, which has had just abysmal ratings, and for good reasons. It is unwatchable, leftist, propagandized shit. Right? From the movies that are nominated, to the winners that are selected, to the absolutely cringy, I'm trying to think of the word I'm looking for, torturous speeches these insular blinders on people give when they get up there that are just condescending to the everyday person of America, or really the world over. It is unwatchable. It is dreck. Even the music numbers, even the pattern, it's just been just awful. And even the hosts were just preachy, aggravating. So the Oscars said, guys, we got to turn this ship around. We got to turn this good ship lollipop around and get it back to Candy Island. So who do they pick as the Oscars host this year? Amy Schumer. I'm going to let that sink in. They're trying to right the ship. They're trying to claw back some of the audience that they have intentionally bled away through self-inflicted wounds, 1 million cuts of progressive thinking that have been inflicted upon the Oscars to make it insufferable and unwatchable. So they bring in Amy Schumer. Noted insufferable leftist Amy Schumer. Amy Schumer, who has not been relevant in 10 years. Amy Schumer, who is as unattractive as she is unfunny now. Now, granted, Amy Schumer maybe back 10, 15 years ago would have been funny, back when the whole I'm a dirty mouth chick comic thing was big. You know, her, Sarah Silverman, Lisa Lapinelli, all kind of in that same vein of comedy, all 10 similar jokes, similar fashion, right? I'm a girl and I'm going to say dirty, dirty things, and it's going to be shocking until everybody just does the same thing, which is what happened. And then they all went woke. Well, maybe not. Lampanelli, I don't think, went too woke, but Sarah Silverman, super woke, incredibly unfunny. Now, she's managed to parlay that into a career in film. She was in that stupid Jennifer Lopez movie that just came out and got terrible reviews, predictably. But not being funny, just being there. And of course, she's quasi-canceled because she did blackface before. Now, Amy Schumer, I don't even know what the last thing she was in. I can't remember the last time I heard her name outside of a conversation about how bizarre it was that Anthony Jeselnik was banging her for a while as a good-looking man. It's confusing and confounding to all of us, and still to this day is. It's a mystery I will never be able to figure out. Unsolved Mysteries needs to take it on. We need a man in a trench coat to investigate this mystery and find out what she had on him. But I don't know who these people that are casting the Oscars are. Why wouldn't you ask, how about Jon Stewart? Go on hands and knees. John, can you please save the Oscars? It would have the highest Oscar ratings in 20 years. Jon Stewart's not too big to host the Oscars. Billy Crystal was one of the biggest names in Hollywood, big box office draw. He hosted the Oscars every year, and I enjoy Billy Crystal very much when he hosted the Oscars. If Billy's not too big to do it, you're not too big to do it. How about Steve Carell, right? He'd be great Oscar sales. Everybody likes him. Jon Stewart, the people on the left and the right both still enjoy him because they think he has dignity. They appreciate skewering both sides. Steve Carell could do a great job with it. How about Michael Che? He's black. He's on SNL. He's a guy that, by the way, if you're not familiar with Michael Che, has a fantastic show on HBO, which he looked at some of the black issues, but in a funny way, and took on some of the absolute garbage the left has been pushing and pushed back on it. He's a guy that I respect. He's a guy that a lot of people that are in the middle, that are of our kind of thinking, or that are probably even on the right, respect, because he does not go full bore down the road. And of course, he's also been on the Legion of Skanks podcast. So he will take the risk for the funny. He doesn't mind. Just a couple names that would have been vastly better than Amy Schumer. How about Hillary Clinton? She hosts the Oscars. So let's go to that. So the John Durham probe has looked into the Russiagate scandal, all of the backdoor peddling of information, all of the backdoor hacking that went on. And you'll remember famously the Democrats said that they were hacked by Russians, and that's how all of Hillary Clinton's private emails were released to WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, by the way, who has gotten a stay of execution for now. But they went after him tooth and nail and blamed him for endangering American lives, as if a scandal created wasn't more dangerous to the American empire, if you will, than a couple of leaks published about emails and a couple of CIA things, which resulted in no American deaths whatsoever. But of course, the Democrats accused Donald Trump of working with the Russians to hack Hillary Clinton's servers, to spy on her. They accused him of doing all sorts of deals and working with spy agencies on the Russian side of things, that he was in fact corrupt and working for Putin as an arm of Vladimir Putin, a thing that just made zero sense in the history of the world. One of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. And this follows a trend of Democrats now being exposed, and Hillary Clinton's campaign being exposed of paying funding for private agencies to work, talking to public agencies like the FBI, the CIA, the NSA. We don't know exactly because these are redacted names, right, of tech executives that were working with people behind the scenes that had access to government information, i.e., getting information on Donald Trump's server, getting information on the White House itself, getting information about his contacts, his cell phone operations in and around Trump Tower, all sorts of information that you would just simply not have. Now, the Clintons, to my knowledge, she hasn't spoken to it yet. Now, she's supposed to give a speech at the Democratic National Convention, I think, in like a week, which is hilarious. And, of course, Hillary Clinton is speaking at the Forbes whatever for women. She's being honored again, guys, and God knows what she's being paid. But I'm waiting to see what their response is. This is just broken, and I have had a very busy day today, so I haven't had a chance to look and see what the latest breaking news is. But I will say this follows an incredible pattern of Democrats getting out in front, and I believe this is intentional, accusing their opponents of doing exactly what they are doing, knowing that this is something that gives them at least some modicum of protection, because they can then say, hey, you're just saying we did it because you're doing it, and we said you did it first, so this is just turning it back around on us. It's a preventative. It's like a, what do they call that? Pre-crime. Except they're doing the crime and then projecting the pre-crime onto their opponents. But it's just fascinating that we spent 2 years hearing about everything that Donald Trump had done in a full fabrication from the Steele dossier, which of course we know, confirmed, paid for by the Clinton campaign. But now all this new information coming out from the Durham probe. And I'm fascinated to hear when this actually starts getting, when they start holding these hearings and things start becoming more and more public. I want Clinton to go to jail, by the way. I wanted her to go to jail before. Now I adamantly want her to go to jail, and not just for all those murders, because as Norm Macdonald famously said, Clinton's they killed all those people. Killed all those guys. Rest in peace, Norm. I'd love to see her in jail. And I think most Democrats would want to see her in jail if this is true, because these people are now... I mean, it's interesting. We have two prongs of reality that are coming to the forefront of things that were denied by the Democratic voter base, right? People that are dying in the wool, Democrats forever. One is COVID. They're being faced with the realities that they have been lied to, they have been manipulated, that they have been fear-mongered by their precious Democratic media, which if they acknowledge it or not, the media is vastly and vehemently left. 90%, right? They're faced with the reality they've been lied to by their government. They've been lied to by their, Biden, by Fauci, that they have gone along and done the good quote unquote thing, and they were wrong. Whether or not they'll admit it is the question, but a lot of people are starting to turn on COVID. Even, as my wife has said, even her business calls, avowed people that are on the progressive side of things are saying, this is ridiculous. I'm so angry that I went along with this and I'm over it. So you have that prong of reality. This is combined with another prong of reality. These people see that they were lied to, that Hillary Clinton and her campaign and the operatives that they have at the DNC that work with the media so closely lied to them about everything. That they used millions of dollars, wasted our taxpayer money to go after this, this imaginary scandal with Donald Trump. No matter how much you hate Donald Trump, you have to see how viciously corrupt it is to have a system wherein you do have the FBI, right? We know the FBI was colluding, working with Hillary Clinton behind the scenes. We have the FBI. You have, like I said, either the CIA or the NSA or somebody within the government that is feeding information, sensitive, government-only information to the Clinton campaign. You have collusion with foreign entities and spies to create a false report that then is happily parroted and published by the media to keep our attention on a complete fabricated farce. And now these people are faced with that other undeniable reality that this woman they have idolized for years, despite the fact that she is a woman that laughs about getting rapists off. Well, this woman is, in fact, the piece of human garbage that we have been saying she is. And that they have been supporting this horrible thing for probably some of them, most of their lives. So it's an exciting time to be alive. It's an exciting time. Okay, last thing, guys. Let's talk just a little bit about the Ukraine situation, right? Now, my wife and we've been talking about it a little bit, and I said, look, Russia's not going to do anything. There's not going to be a situation in Ukraine. It's not overly. I don't think it's beneficial enough for Russia to go in there and cause an international incident wherein NATO's going to get involved. We're going to have a hot war again. I don't think anything's going to happen. This is all saber rattling unnecessarily, but it is a convenient distraction for the Biden administration, which is just reeling and taking body blows on every possible front, from the economy to the supply chains to the truckers to the COVID to you name it, they're getting it, and rightly so. So they need a distraction, and a nice little hot war would be something nice that we could point to, and all the media coverage would happily pivot to what's going on with Ukraine. I mean, they're already pivoting to it because they don't want to cover the real news, and I'm fascinated to hear how much of the mainstream media covers this Clinton news. But it's a fascinating situation in that it's a chicken or the egg for me right now, right? I look at reports and, our Bobby Wilson, who's one of our supporters, has a, I think actually, well, I was going to say he had a really interesting company that was like a consulting entity where he was talking to people and trying to help them practice for job interviews and for interview situations. But Bobby had posted a Twitter feed, which he's following, which is the real life updates that people are posting, not mainstream media, but photos from the ground showing that, yes, there are tanks being shipped in. There are guns being shipped in. Now, question is this setting the stage for an invasion, right? And these are not actually going into the Ukraine border. They're getting close on Russia's side. So is this something where Putin's just doing it to piss America off? Is he actually planning on doing it? Or because the U.S. is moving troops over there, because NATO is mobilizing over there, because all these buildup is taking place on the Ukrainian side, Putin now says, all right, well, if you're going to do that, I'm going to go ahead and beef up my side. Again, chicken or egg. Is he doing a defensive posture in regards to an offensive posturing from NATO and the Ukraine, right? Because our military industrial complex, because our spying agencies put out this bullshit report that Russia was going to invade Ukraine, which has been denied by the Kremlin at all fronts, right? Full stop. This is nonsense. We're not going to invade Ukraine. Right? They've been very vociferous about that. So, which is it? Was this made up nonsense and Putin's responding to it with a show of force because he doesn't want to look weak? We know who Putin is. We know this man is somebody that views strength as a virtue. He knows that his leadership depends on always exuding strength. There's a reason this lunatic rides around on horses with no shirt on. There's a reason he lets, his hockey team lets people score goals. He scores goals on the best players in the world and all this other nonsense. He has to project a visage of strength. So, is this simply more of the same? Projecting strength in response to this made-up nonsense from our own spy agencies, the international community, the buildup, the NATO. Again, in my opinion, assuring that the orders are coming in for the bombers, for the tanks, for the missiles, even though we have a chip shortage and these people can't actually produce any of the things that they're promising. There's supply chain issues on all fronts, but keep the orders coming in, keep the down payments coming in. So let's make sure that there's a war that could be happening at any moment. I still think nothing is going to happen. So there you go. That's my take, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. And by the way, you should definitely check out. So Tyler Colford, buddy of ours, Crypto Man is his rap name. He has a song, which you might have noticed, Ross Ulbricht is back. He's putting out some NFTs to try to get out of the jail, try to raise some funding. Free Ross, hashtag Free Ross. And there's a song of the same title, which if you haven't heard us talk about in a little while, good, check it out. I'll link to it in the show notes. It is called hashtag Free Ross. It is a fantastic song by my man, Crypto Man, rap song. You're going to love it. And I want to remind you to listen to Burnin' Daylight, a podcast from my buddy Matt McKinley over there. Great show. Cowboying, cattle, not rustling, but cattle herding, horseback riding, whiskey drinking, liberty talking. So check that out too. Burning, apostrophe on the end of that, and daylight. Otherwise, that's for me, guys. That's going to do it. Me, Brian McWilliams, and the Lions of Liberty. Of course, we have 3 shows here. Subscribe to all 3 solo feeds if you would. Subscribe to my Electric Libertyland solo feed where you get some extra shows here and there. And give us a new review if you would. If you'd be so kind to go to that Electric Libertyland feed and write a review and a 5-star, that would really help me out here. And share the show, guys, please. Share it on Twitter. Tell people about it. Thank you to those of you out there. I see a lot of people have been tweeting at us and saying, hey, here's my favorite shows. Really appreciate that, guys. And if you guys are going to the California Libertarian Convention, I think I'm going to make an appearance there, do some voting, and hopefully say hi to Davey Smith on Friday night. So there you have it. For me, Brian McWilliams from the Lions of Liberty and from Electric Libertyland. Always stay plugged into Liberty.